I want to be very clear before I begin. What you're about to hear is not a legend, not a myth, and not something pulled from an old book of ghost stories. This is a true story, documented in fragments, reports, and accounts from real people. It happened in 2009 in a coastal town known as Grayhaven, located along the northern Atlantic shoreline. Grayhaven is the kind of place where nothing ever happens. A fishing town, quiet streets, one main road, a lighthouse that hasn't been fully operational in decades. People there measure time by tides and moon phases, which is why what happened that night still doesn't make sense. I didn't believe it at first either. But after reviewing the security footage, the emergency call logs, and the astronomy records, I can say this with certainty. For 7 minutes, the moon stopped moving. And during those 7 minutes, time did not belong to us anymore. On October 17, 2009, the weather in Grayhaven was calm. No storms, no fog, no unusual forecasts. The ocean was quiet, the kind of stillness locals appreciate because it means an easy morning for fishermen. At 11:58 p.m., everything was normal. Cars moved, waves rolled in, streetlights flickered like always. At 11:59 p.m., something went wrong. Not loudly, not violently, just wrong. The wind stopped first. Every flag along the pier fell limp at the exact same moment. Waves froze mid-roll, as if the ocean itself had been paused. Seagulls in flight stopped flapping, hanging in the air like decorations. And then the clock stopped. Every digital clock in Grayhaven froze at 11:59. Analog clocks halted between seconds. Phones lost signal but didn't shut down. Power stayed on, yet nothing updated. And above it all, the moon. It was full that night. Large, bright, low over the horizon, and completely still. Only a few people noticed immediately. One of them was Merrow Hale, a 41-year-old night shift dock supervisor. He later told investigators that he was leaning against a railing, watching the tide, when he realized the water wasn't moving anymore. At first, he thought he was dizzy. Then he noticed his cigarette smoke wasn't drifting. It hung in the air, unmoving, like frozen breath. Merrow looked up. The moon wasn't drifting across the sky the way it always does. No slow crawl, no shift. It was locked in place. He checked his phone. 11:59 p.m. He tapped the screen. Nothing changed. That's when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned, expecting to see one of the dock workers. No one was moving. People stood frozen mid-step. A man reaching into his coat. A woman halfway through a sentence, her mouth open, eyes wide. Everyone was paused, except Merrow. Across town, in a second-floor apartment near the lighthouse, Lenora Vexley, a 26-year-old astronomy graduate student from the UK, was staring at her telescope in confusion. She had been tracking the moon's position for a personal research log. When she checked her readings, the data stopped updating. At exactly 11:59 p.m., she stepped away from the telescope and looked out the window. The moon filled half the sky, and it felt closer. Not physically closer, aware closer. Lenora later described the sensation as being looked at by something that doesn't blink. She grabbed her notebook, writing the words she would later repeat under oath. The moon has stopped, and I don't think it's supposed to notice us. Then there was Calderwin, a 52-year-old local police dispatcher. He was mid-call when the voice on the other end cut out. The line didn't go dead. It stayed open, silent. When Calder turned his chair, his co-worker was frozen mid-movement. Coffee spilled in the air between cup and floor. Calder stood up. Every screen in the dispatch room read 11:59 p.m. And outside the window, the moon hung low. Too low. Something else happened during those 7 minutes. Something no one noticed at first. Under the frozen moonlight, shapes began to appear. At first, they looked like shadows. Then silhouettes. Then people. They stood beneath the moon, scattered across Grayhaven streets, rooftops, beaches. They weren't frozen. They were standing perfectly still by choice. Their heads tilted upward, their faces pale, their mouths slightly open. as if listening or worshiping, and none of them had reflections. Merrow Hale saw one of them first, a figure standing at the end of the pier, barefoot on the frozen water. It slowly turned its head toward him. Its eyes reflected moonlight like glass, and it smiled. That was when Merrow started running. But the ground beneath his feet felt wrong, like walking through memory instead of space. And behind him, more figures appeared, watching, waiting. Time resumed at 12:06 a.m. The wind returned. Waves crashed. Clocks jumped forward. People stumbled, confused, unaware that anything had happened. But some people never noticed time starting again, because they were already gone. By morning, Grayhaven looked normal again. The sun rose. Boats left the harbor. Shops opened late, as they often did. People complained about the cold and the quiet night. Most residents had no memory of anything unusual happening at all, but a few of them did. Merrow Hale didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed until dawn, replaying the pier over and over in his head. The frozen water, the unmoving moon, the figure that smiled at him like it already knew his name. When the police station opened, Merrow was the first one through the door. He tried to explain what he had seen. The officers listened politely. Then they exchanged looks. No alcohol in his system. No drugs. No prior incidents. Just a shaken man describing something impossible. They would have dismissed it completely if others hadn't started showing up. Lenora Vexley arrived next. She looked exhausted, her hands trembling as she handed over her notebook. Inside were pages of moon charts that abruptly stopped at 11:59 p.m. Every entry after that time was blank. She told them the moon had been closer than usual. Not physically closer, but present in a way she couldn't describe using scientific language. When asked how long the event lasted, she answered without hesitation. 7 minutes, she said. She had no way of knowing that number. By noon, reports began coming in about missing people. Not dozens, not hundreds, exactly 9. Each disappearance shared the same details. No struggle, no signs of leaving, beds untouched, doors unlocked, personal belongings still in place. One of the missing was Auric Vale, a reclusive night photographer known for capturing lunar shots along the coast. His camera was found on the beach, still powered on. The last photos saved to the memory card showed the moon, perfectly centered, and something standing beneath it. Security footage began surfacing that afternoon. Most cameras recorded nothing unusual, just a sudden time jump. 11:59 p.m. to 12:06 a.m. 7 minutes missing. But one camera, mounted above a closed seafood market near the docks, captured something else. At 11:59 p.m., everyone in frame froze, except for 3 figures. They walked slowly through the street, barefoot, skin glowing faintly under the moonlight. Their movements were deliberate, synchronized, as if following a silent signal. They stopped beneath the moon and tilted their heads upward. The footage ended there. No glitch, no distortion, just 7 minutes of nothing. Then the missing people started coming back. Not all of them, only 5. They returned separately, quietly, within a few hours of each other. Each one appeared confused but physically unharmed. No injuries, no signs of trauma. At first, everyone felt relieved, until someone tried talking to them. They spoke normally, but their tone was flat, emotionless. They responded correctly, but without hesitation, as if pulling answers from a script. Family members said something felt wrong, not different enough to point at, but wrong enough to notice. Merrow Hale saw it himself that evening. One of the returned men stood at the edge of the pier, staring at the moon before it even rose. He didn't blink, didn't react to sound. His skin reflected light oddly, like polished stone. When Merrow asked him if he was okay, the man turned and smiled. The same smile, too slow, too practiced. Under the dock lights, Merrow noticed something else. A faint glow beneath the man's skin. Silver, pulsing, like moonlight trapped in flesh. Lenora Vexley made a discovery that night that sealed her fear into certainty. She rechecked global lunar data from observatories around the world. Every record showed normal movement. Every record except one, a small, private astronomy station located just outside Grayhaven. Its log showed a complete halt in lunar progression for exactly 7 minutes. And one final note, automatically logged by the system. Subject alignment complete. Lenora stared at the screen, heart pounding. Whatever happened that night wasn't a malfunction. It was an event, and it wasn't finished. The moon rose again that night, right on time. But those who had seen it freeze once couldn't shake the feeling that it was waiting. Watching Grayhaven the way something watches prey that escaped once, and plans to return for. By the third night, Grayhaven felt watched. Nothing obvious had changed. The streets were the same. The sea sounded normal again, but people began closing their curtains earlier. Porch lights stayed on until morning. Conversations dropped into whispers whenever the moon came up. Those who remembered the freeze avoided looking at the sky. Those who didn't couldn't stop staring. Lenora vexedly stopped sleeping altogether. She filled pages with observations, sketches, and questions that had no scientific answers. She noted something unsettling about the moon's behavior after the event. Its position was correct. Its brightness was correct. But its reflection wasn't. Moonlight no longer scattered the same way on water or glass. It seemed sharper, focused, as if it had direction. She tested it. At exactly 12:01 a.m., she placed 3 objects on her windowsill: a mirror, a bowl of water, and a polished metal surface. The moonlight reflected differently from each. Except it shouldn't have. All reflections pointed inward, toward Grayhaven. Calderwin made a mistake that same night. He accessed restricted emergency audio logs from the moment time resumed. Most calls were panic, confusion, people reporting dizziness or lost minutes. But one call stood out. It came in at 12:06 a.m. No caller ID, no background noise, just breathing. Slow, steady, calm. Then a voice, layered, as if multiple mouths spoke through one throat. "We were observed," it said, "and now we observe back." The line disconnected. Calder never played that recording again. The returned people began changing. Small things at first. They stopped eating when no one watched. They stood outside at night without coats, skin cold but unaffected. Dogs avoided them. Babies cried when held by them. And always, they looked at the moon. Even before it rose. Merrow Hale decided to confront one of them. The man from the pier. His name was Edrin Shaw, one of the 5 who had returned. Merrow followed him late one night to the shoreline. Edrin stood barefoot in the sand, waves breaking around his ankles. "Do you remember where you went?" Merrow asked. Edrin smiled gently. "We were chosen," he said. "By what?" Merrow asked. Edrin tilted his head upward. "By what was already watching," he replied. Then he added something that made Merrow's blood run cold. "It noticed you too. At the old lighthouse, something began activating. The structure had been decommissioned for years. No power, no automation. Yet at 11:59 p.m., the light flickered on. 7 minutes later, it shut off again. This happened 3 nights in a row. Lenora was the first to connect it. The lighthouse beam wasn't random. It aligned exactly with the moon during its highest point. Like a signal, like a reply. Security cameras near the lighthouse finally captured what no one wanted to see. During the 7-minute window, the frozen town appeared unchanged. But beneath the moon, the figures returned. Dozens this time, standing perfectly still, arranged in a wide circle around the lighthouse. And inside the circle, the returned people, kneeling, their skin glowing brighter with each second. And above them, the moon pulsed. Once, twice, like a slow heartbeat. Lenora realized the truth too late. The moon hadn't stopped to malfunction. It stopped to synchronize. Grayhaven wasn't chosen because it mattered. It was chosen because it noticed. And once something notices you, it doesn't forget. The 7th night approached, and everyone who remembered the first freeze knew exactly what time to watch the clock. On the 7th night, Grayhaven did not sleep. No announcements were made. No warnings issued. Yet somehow, Those who remembered the first freeze felt it in their bones. The air grew heavy as midnight approached. Even the ocean seemed cautious, waves rolling and slower than usual. At 11:57 p.m., Lenora Vexley shut down every light in her apartment and set her recorder on the table. She wanted proof, not for the world, for herself. At 11:58 p.m., Merrow Hale stood on the pier again, heart racing, eyes fixed on the horizon. He didn't know why he had come back, only that running hadn't helped the first time. Calderwin watched the dispatch clocks, hands clenched, breath shallow. No one spoke. At 11:59 p.m., the world stopped. But this time, not everything froze. The wind died instantly. Waves locked in place. Birds halted midair. Clocks stopped, once again, at 11:59. But the returned people moved. Slowly, deliberately. They stepped out of houses, cars, and shadows, gathering beneath the moon like moths answering a call they could finally hear clearly. And this time, others moved too. Merrow felt it when time didn't take him. The pier around him froze. The water hardened, but his heart still beat. His breath still fogged the air. He was not alone. Across town, Lenora could move. Calder could move. Only those who had been aware the first time were spared. The moon changed. Not in size, not in color, in focus. It sharpened, as if something behind it had adjusted a lens. Its surface rippled faintly, shadows shifting in patterns that no crater map could explain. And then came the sound. Not loud, not quiet. A pressure inside the skull, like a voice speaking directly into thought. You are aligned. Figures emerged beneath the moonlight. Not the pale ones from before. These were taller, thinner. Their forms seemed unfinished, like outlines filled with light rather than flesh. Their faces were smooth, featureless, except for where eyes should be. There, moonlight burned. They circled the lighthouse again. The returned people knelt willingly. But something new happened. The figures turned their attention to the unfrozen. To Merrow, to Lenora, to Calder. Lenora watched one of them approach her window. It didn't walk. It folded space beneath it, stepping closer without crossing distance. Her recorder spiked with static. Her vision blurred, and then images flooded her mind. Cities under frozen moons. Entire coastlines standing still. People replaced. Worlds synchronized. Grayhaven wasn't the first. It was a test. Merrow tried to run. The ground resisted him, heavy and unreal, but he forced himself forward. One of the figures reached out as he passed. Its touch never landed, but he felt it anyway. A memory not his own. Standing beneath a sky that never moved. Watching a moon that never blinked. Waiting. At the lighthouse, the beam ignited again. This time, it didn't shine outward. It pointed upward. The returned people began to glow intensely, their bodies becoming translucent. Veins of silver light traced beneath their skin, revealing shapes that did not belong to human anatomy. One by one they stood, and looked back at the town, not with anger, with completion. Then the moon pulsed. Harder, brighter. Time snapped back into place. At 12:06 a.m., sound returned violently. Waves crashed. Birds fell screaming. People stumbled as 7 minutes slammed into existence all at once. The lighthouse went dark. The moon resumed its path. But something had changed forever. 4 of the returned people were gone. Not missing. Gone. In their place stood something else. Perfect copies. Smiling. Breathing. Watching. Merrow collapsed on the pier. Lenora's recorder melted internally, its casing warped from heat that shouldn't exist. Calder sat alone in the dispatch room, staring at a blinking screen. A new alert appeared. No sender. No system ID. Just 6 words. Alignment incomplete. Observation continues. After the second freeze, Grayhaven was never the same. People tried to move on. Authorities blamed power surges, mass hallucination, experimental satellites, anything that sounded reasonable. Reports were buried. Footage vanished. Witnesses were encouraged to forget. But forgetting was impossible for those who remembered. The copies blended in almost perfectly. They laughed at the right moments. They went to work. They slept beside their families. Yet something subtle was always missing. They didn't dream. They didn't fear death. And they never, ever looked away from the moon when it rose. Lenora Vexley left Grayhaven 3 weeks later. She took a research position overseas, but she never published another paper. Science had failed her. Numbers couldn't explain intention. Before she left, she mailed me everything. Her notes, her recordings, her final conclusion. "The moon is not an object," she wrote. "It is an interface." Merrow Hale didn't leave. He stayed on the pier, night after night, watching the tide and the sky. He said someone had to notice if it happened again. One night, I asked him why the figures didn't take everyone. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because awareness is rare and valuable." Calderwin resigned after receiving one final call. No timestamp, no voice, just an image transmitted directly to his screen. A frozen city, a motionless sky, and a moon fixed directly overhead, with one word beneath it: soon. I am telling this story now because something changed again. Last month, the moon paused, not long enough for the world to notice, but long enough for those of us who remember. And this time, it felt closer. If you're hearing this and you've ever experienced lost time, if you've ever felt watched under moonlight, if you've ever looked at the sky and felt it looking back, you were noticed. Grayhaven was not the end. It was the beginning. The moon never stopped moving. It stopped to see who was paying attention. End of story. If this true story unsettled you, you're not alone. Many people have shared similar experiences, but never speak about them. If this story felt familiar, or if you've ever experienced something you couldn't explain under the night sky, share your experience in the comments. Someone out there may need to hear it. Don't forget to like this video if it kept you engaged, subscribe for more true horror and paranormal stories, and share this with anyone who stays awake at night wondering what's really watching us from above. Because some stories aren't meant to scare you, they're meant to warn you.